Mr. Chancellor, I present to you Annabel Soutar. Est-ce qu'elle va venir? Is the truth something absolute, or is it something we each construct? Throughout her career, Annabel Soutar has combined the poetic soul of a playwright with the curiosity and drive of an investigative journalist, creating a body of work that explores pressing social issues by embracing the multiplicity of lived truths and experiences. Après avoir terminé son diplôme de premier cycle à l'Université de Princeton, Madame Soutar a séjourné à Singapour, où elle a enseigné la dramaturgie, la théorie cinématographique et la direction. De retour dans sa ville natale de Montréal en 1998, Annabel Soutar et son partenaire, l'acteur Alex Ivanovici, ont suivi des candidats politiques partout dans la province en vue de la première élection du Québec depuis le référendum de 1995. They use extensive interviews with Quebecers on the campaign trail to create Novembre, a play that sought to illuminate the underground political discourse behind the headline hype. So was born Porte-Parole, their award-winning theater company that focuses on works of immediate social relevance. In the more than 2 decades that followed, Annabel has built a body of work that explores societal issues as diverse as the energy sector, the Quebec health care system, and political polarization, all built on her deep dive research that draws dialogue from court transcripts, newspapers, clippings, government reports, and her own insightful first-person interviews. In her play Seeds, Soutar took documentary theater to a new level of sophistication by incorporating her investigative process into the story itself as she explored the Supreme Court showdown between a Saskatchewan farmer and a global biotech company. Soutar's plays have been produced across the country and have garnered critical acclaim. The Watershed, originally commissioned by the 2015 Toronto Para-Pan American Games program, has since been performed across the country. J'aime Hydro, une collaboration entre Madame Soutar et la comédienne et dramaturge Christine Beaulieu, a remporté le prestigieux prix québécois Michel Tremblay pour le meilleur texte dramatique, ainsi que le prix pour le meilleur spectacle de l'année à Montréal de l'Association québécoise des critiques de théâtre, en plus d'avoir été finaliste pour le Grand Prix du Conseil des arts de Montréal et pour le prix littéraire du gouverneur général. Annabel Soutar's work gives audience multiple viewpoints from which to see contemporary Canadian issues. Canada seems to be deeply divided ideologically today, she has said. My experience traveling around Canada is that people share a lot of common ground, but rarely have enough contact with one another to express that common ground. For Annabel Soutar, there is a tool for nurturing community engagement, for realigning narrative divides, and returning important conversation to everyday citizens. Hers is a mission to make the political personal, because after all, democracy is ultimately about people. Mr. Chancellor, I present to you Annabel Soutar so that you may confer upon her the degree of Doctor of Letters, honoris causa.
Merci Suzanne pour ces mots. Monsieur le chancelier McCall MacBain, Madame la principale et vice-chancelière Fortier, Monsieur Panda, président du Conseil des gouverneurs, chers amis qui reçoivent aussi un doctorat honoris causa aujourd'hui, mesdames et messieurs. When Principal Fortier's office contacted me a few months ago to schedule a call, I expected an informal chat with Suzanne about her reaction to my latest theater production. This gives you an idea of how far off my radar was the prospect of receiving a McGill honorary doctorate. After I recovered from my initial surprise and shock, I began to ask myself some questions about my reaction. For those of you who know me well, you know that asking questions is a passion of mine. Why am I so surprised that I'm being honored in this way? I became aware through this questioning that since I co-founded Port Pearl Productions 20 years ago with my husband, Alex Ivanovich, I've been harboring a deep professional inferiority complex. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized that this feeling should not be a surprise to me or to anyone else. In the 20-year period that I've worked in the theater, the world has witnessed the most rapid and profound transformation of entertainment and information technology since the birth of Western theater in ancient Greece. Digital storytellers today can reach a global audience of billions of people simultaneously by posting simply to their own social media feeds or by distributing their work on a variety of cheap on-demand platforms. With all these free and accessible entertainment sources available to us, why would anyone today risk facing bad weather, crumbling roads, construction detours, and scarce parking to go to the theater in Montreal? Why have I been working as a stage artist and producer for 22 years at a time of unprecedented digital technology innovation? Well, since I only have 3 to 4 minutes today to answer this confounding question, and I've probably used up most of that already, I'm going to focus on one concept today that has driven me throughout my career, the concept of engagement. I decided to become a documentary playwright in one eureka moment on a windy autumn evening in 1991. I was an undergraduate student at Princeton University, and that night I wandered into a theater for some distraction, like that. That was how I viewed the theater back then, as a place to escape reality. The question, why did I want to escape reality, is a relevant one to ask here, but I won't digress. What I encountered on that evening in the documentary theater of the great American playwright and actress Anna Deavere Smith was a woman profoundly engaged in a conversation about her time. A conversation about how violent conflict can arise between different cultural groups in America if they don't take the time to understand the world from each other's point of view. Anna is an African-American woman, but in a prodigious solo performance where she portrays upwards of 50 characters on stage: Black, white, Latino, Hasidic Jew, male, female, old, young. She wasn't simply promoting the rights of her cultural tribe. She was warning the audience that if we don't start listening to each other and finding ways to bridge our ideological and cultural differences, American democracy will collapse under the weight of its citizens' contempt for one another. Sound familiar? This was 30 years ago. In the theater that night, I realized that our world was becoming polarized and that we had to build creative spaces where diverse people could engage in tough conversations about the real world before it was too late. Fast forward 30 years, and I realized that despite my professional inferiority complex, through my work and in collaboration with hundreds of talented stage artists in Quebec, one of whom is sitting here today, my husband and creative partner, Alex, I have slowly been building a powerful live platform for real human engagement, while many of my storytelling counterparts in the digital realm have been denaturing the concept of engagement to segregate us into online silos. Engagement today is the word used in digital marketing plans to describe moments when users that might not even be human beings, they could be bots, as Elon Musk is trying to prove with Twitter today, when those users click buttons expressing emotions through standardized images of hearts, rainbows, unicorns, champagne glasses, smiley faces, etc. These so-called acts of engagement are the value proposition upon which we have built the first trillion-dollar companies, many of which are in Silicon Valley. I participated just last week in one of these acts of engagement. I clicked share on Twitter to disseminate an article about mindful leadership to my followers who all basically think like me, an article I hadn't even fully read, while I simultaneously spoke on the phone with my daughter's teacher, walked my dog to the grocery store to save time so I could get home faster to have time to work more after dinner. This proud moment of multitasking produced data about my attention that I unconsciously fed to social media algorithms, which they sold to an advertiser trying to get me to buy a meditation app to relax and regain my focus. And the worst part is, I bought the app. And I think I'm in the wrong business. It took Principal Fortier calling me up 3 months ago to offer me an honorary doctorate for me to follow this line of questioning and to gather the courage to speak to you today with pride about what I do in the theater. Over the past 22 years, hundreds of thousands of people have left the comfort of their own homes in Canada, the US, France, Lithuania, Germany, to engage with the work I do. So what does this tell me? Well, for one thing, it makes me truly optimistic about people's appetite for real engagement today. People don't really love sitting at home scrolling and clicking or binge watching on Netflix for too long. For a little bit, yes, but not for too long. They are not very proud of the emojis they emit. People like being challenged. People like being uncomfortable and then getting over their discomfort. People like having disagreements with other people, but staying at the table to finish their conversation. People like finding themselves in places where they're not all the same. People really want to be engaged today because they're not happy being engagement data points for companies that don't care about whether they are truly engaged. And I believe that the people I'm describing are the people that McGill wants to invite into its community to launch its third bold century. I believe the type of engagement I'm talking about is the foundation upon which Principal Fortier and Chancellor McCall MacBain want to build the university's bright future. A foundation of open and respectful dialogue with a community that's curious about and not afraid of its plurality. A community that turns conflict into opportunities for learning. A community that has the courage to have tough conversations about its imperfect past without losing sight of the fact that simply enduring for 2 centuries as an institution is a miracle and something to be very, very proud of. I am so proud to be joining the McGill community for this next bold step in its evolution. I want to thank my late father, Ian Soutar. I'm going to try not to cry and just be in a moment of joy. Class of 54, and my mother, Helgi Soutar, class of 54, who's here today, for endowing me with a passion for McGill through their deep engagement with the community over the years. And I want to thank my husband, Alex Ivanovich, who has been my creative and personal partner for 25 years, and without whom I never would be standing here today. Thank you so much for this honor.